Anderson.
Deputy Speaker, we are a clever country and we are a rich country. Surely we are a clever enough country to understand the value of having the world's best education system. Surely we are a rich enough country to have the world's best funded education system. But instead we have had a succession of governments now that are not addressing education, in particular tertiary education, as well and as well funded as we possibly could. The problem actually starts in the previous government, where they ripped $4 billion out of the tertiary sector. So much money, in fact, Deputy Speaker, that our unis are now underfunded by some $1 billion a year. And now we have these reforms being pushed by the current government, which are just going to compound those problems for students, particularly disadvantaged students, particularly female students, and compound the problems for smaller universities and, in particular, regional universities. Deputy Speaker, these reforms will be unfair to students. They will result in dearer courses across the board, and it will result, by implication, in university students having to pay more for their course, both when they do their course and a hell of a lot more by the time they finish paying off their course, if only because of the changes to the interest rate that will apply to the debt. Adding to that, they'll have to start paying off their debt much, much sooner. So, by implication, you have these students who are going to pay more for the course, they're going to have to start paying off their course sooner, and they're going to ultimately pay off a lot more money by the end of the day. That will obviously, Deputy Speaker, fundamentally hurt disadvantaged students. It will also hurt women in particular, because women tend to, when you look at their professional profile, they'll go to uni, they'll start work, but then they'll drop out of the workforce, perhaps to start a family, and then re-enter the workforce later on in their life. But while they're out of the workforce, the interest is still accumulating. So they'll end up having this debt the whole of their working life and even beyond, conceivably, Deputy Speaker. And it's not like scholarships are going to help any of these people out, because under these reforms there will be fewer scholarships available. Deputy Speaker, these reforms will also hurt smaller universities. It's fine for the Big Eight to say that these reforms are fine and they support them. But what about the vast majority of our universities that are in regional areas and have campuses in regional areas? Take my own university as a case in point. We have 3 campuses: the campus in Hobart, but a smaller campus in Launceston and an even smaller campus in Burnie. A university like the University of Tasmania will be hit, and hit very, very hard, by these reforms. The University of Tasmania, almost certainly, if these reforms become the law of the land, will have to axe a number of courses, certainly the courses that don't pay for themselves and aren't profitable. The University of Tasmania is at very, very real risk of having to shut down the Burnie campus and even the Launceston campus, because both of those campuses run at a loss and both of them are subsidised by cross-payments from the Hobart campus. So in a small place like Tasmania, or a small community like Tasmania, not only are the students being hammered with dearer courses and courses that will be more difficult to pay off over their term, we're likely to have access to fewer courses and fewer campuses. These are some of the reasons, Deputy Speaker, why these reforms are fundamentally unfair and cruel, and they will disproportionately impact on disadvantaged students and universities in rural and regional areas, of which Hobart and Tasmania is one. This is another symptom, or another sign of a government that is cruel. We saw it in the budget, which is a miserable piece of work, which disproportionately impacts on low-income and disadvantaged people. And we now see it in these tertiary reforms, that if they become the law of the land, and we can only hope that in the Senate, the senators, and in particular the crossbenchers in the Senate, have the good sense to understand that our universities are already chronically underfunded to the tune of $1 billion a year. Have the good sense to understand that if these reforms go through the Senate, then it will compound those problems and the funding shortfall, and compound the problems terribly, and will have a disproportionate effect on students from low incomes and disadvantaged backgrounds, and a disproportionate effect on universities in regional and country areas. They shouldn't listen to the Big Eight. The Big Eight will do very, very nicely out of this, thank you very much, but the vast majority of universities and the vast majority of university students will be hammered. I will vote against these reforms, and I call on the senators also to vote against these reforms.
The member's time has expired. This discussion